Is this new slasher movie as cringe as the title would have it sound? Let's discuss. Before I get started, I'd like to kindly ask that you hit the like button, and please subscribe to the channel for more content just like this.
All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
So They, Them is a new horror slasher film, and I use those terms loosely, that follows a group of teenagers who are at a Lgbtq conversion camp, where they endure unsettling psychological techniques, and also are being stalked by a mysterious mass killer. Now, as always, this review will be spoiler-free, but I do think everyone should understand one thing if you are intending to give this movie a shot. That synopsis, along with the trailers that already exist, are very misleading. And I understand that that was probably done on purpose and is a creative choice. And let's be honest, in 2022, they're not going to have a slasher target LGBTQ members.
Oh, you're right. And when you're right, you're right. And you're always right.
Michael Myers killed a couple of gay guys in his last movie and they were calling him homophobic. If you were looking at this movie from afar, you would assume that it's Friday the 13th-esque, just with LGBTQ characters instead of straight characters. But that's not what it is at all. In fact, I would say that this movie is about 15% horror and slasher content, and about 85% teen drama. A majority of this film is these characters explaining what they go through as members of this community.
Why do you cry?
And it's all done from the writer and director's perspective. But in typical modern entertainment fashion, the message here is lost, because it's delivered in such a heavy-handed and frankly laughable way. If your goal with this movie was to inform people about the struggles of this community, then you might have been better served treating it with a little bit more respect and writing better characters.
That makes sense.
Every single character in this movie is presented as your most obvious stereotype, which I would think would be more offensive than the actual issues they're trying to address. At what point will people stop falling for this fake diversity initiative and realize that all these different groups that everyone in Hollywood seems to care about so much are being used as a marketing tool? But I'm the bad guy if I say it comes off unnatural or disingenuous.
Boo this man!
Again, without spoiling anything, there is quite literally a sleepaway camp moment in this movie, and if you've seen Sleepaway Camp, you know exactly what I'm talking about, that I honestly thought was so random and unnecessary, it actually makes the Sleepaway Camp twist look like a work of Shakespeare. I mean, every single line of dialogue uttered by one of these characters feels like it was written by someone who is desperately trying to prove that they are virtuous, but instead it actually ends up doing more damage than anything because it's so cringe.
This is whack! I can't get jiggy with this shit!
The idea around this movie, from what I can gather, is that the slasher element doesn't really matter all that much, because the real horror is the conversion camp itself. Now, that idea could have worked if it was presented to us by competent writers. But every relationship, every interaction between these characters, and every story about their journey to find themselves just comes off as a cliche after cliche after cliche. Kevin Bacon is in this movie and his character runs the camp, and he presents himself initially as just someone who wants to help these kids, and doesn't necessarily have villainous intentions.
Fuck you!
And I thought Kevin Bacon did a decent job early on in the film acting-wise. But by the end of the film, his character just became another cliche with laughable dialogue. How do you waste Kevin Bacon? Well, They, Them managed to do just that. If you're wondering why I haven't mentioned the horror elements of this movie much, it's because there's not much to speak of. The one thing that would have saved this travesty is if it had a memorable slasher, some cool kills, or maybe even some tension. But it had none of that. Everything about it was completely forgettable. Even the big reveal at the end of the movie was completely predictable. I gotta be honest with you, I don't know who this movie is made for. I can't imagine that hardcore horror fans would feel satisfied by it. And the nature in which these characters' stories is delivered really shouldn't be acceptable for anyone if you have any kind of standards. This is a clear-cut case of everyone involved with this movie thinking they are more clever than they actually are.
Oh, this hard goddamn work being this good.
This pushes my notion of I watch shit so you don't have to a whole new level. They, Them feels more like poorly delivered content than it does an actual film. And that's why They, Them is getting the Disgusted Ian Malcolm.
That is one big pile of shit.
Surprise, surprise, the incel has a problem with a slasher that features representation. Do you ever go outside and touch any grass? Just be honest, you don't like this movie because it has gay people in it. Bigot.
Y'all be cool. Right on.